Hello, I'm Matt Jordan, and my pronouns are he and him, and I'm a developer at Northwestern University Libraries. This presentation is in part about an application called Canopy IIIF, but it's also about an idea that I've been sitting with for about 2 years now, and that is can the IIIF Presentation API serve as a data model to generate a static site from? I'm going to walk you through that. Or more specifically, on the question, can a IIIF collection serve as that source? And Canopy is a tool that will take that IIIF collection and it'll basically build out an entire Next.js instance, sort of similar to what Adam was just showing you. And it's just going to do it in a few steps. And it's essentially somewhat a collection viewer, but it's also a fully functioning website. And I opted for Next.js because I do a lot of JavaScript development and React development, but this idea doesn't necessarily need to be fixed to that domain. Just so happens that Canopy IIIF is. Some use cases for it include maybe extending existing collections in a repository for digital exhibitions. It could be that maybe you are a researcher or on a research project that needs to curate a IIIF collection from manifests from multiple institutions, house them in one spot, and then talk about those manifests. Or it could serve as an entire digital collections front end for some sort of smaller institution, thinking like a smaller college or public library that has its own distinctive collections that it wants to serve up to the public. The limit of that could be somewhere around 5,000. I haven't really tested beyond that, meaning 5,000 objects, but I think this really would just be dependent on the build time of Canopy. So there are many other solutions for digital exhibits projects out there. On the more minimal side, you have frameworks like Collection Builder, which is built by the University of Idaho, and Wax, built by Mari in Europe, which are built from easy to construct and manage CSVs and files, and they generate static instances. Wax itself also stands up its own internal IIIF image API. There's, of course, Spotlight, which is a Blacklight plugin. There's Omeka S, which is sort of a PHP MySQL CMS and framework for managing multiple exhibits under one stack. And of course, you have like your various Drupal and WordPress instances extending off of university managed infrastructure. I think we've all seen those. And then there's Canopy, which I think can be classified alongside these, but really what makes it different from the rest is that it will use the IIIF Presentation API as that data model, and it'll reference those resources in place. So it's not actually ingesting a bunch of images into it. It's saying, hey, these images exist elsewhere, and these manifests exist elsewhere, and we're just going to take that data and render it into a static site. So I'm relatively new at Northwestern. I started about 1.5 years ago, and in a former role at the University of Tennessee, I worked under Emily Gore, who was my assistant dean. She's now at Georgia now, and Mark Baggett, who is the head of digital initiatives. And in planning sessions heading into 2021, we sort of geared up for some ambitious IIIF focused initiatives. Much of our thinking and our IIIF strategy stemmed from a presentation that was given by Maria Matienzo and Esme Kaus at the CNI Fall 2020 virtual membership meeting. This presentation was called "A Tree's Strength is Its Trunk, IIIF as Central Operational Infrastructure," and it outlined the foundations for our strategy, which would be one where our DH projects and exhibits would not be disparate projects with manifests sprinkled about it, but rather we hope that it would be rooted to a tenet of having these new projects being branches extending from some sort of robust IIIF infrastructure. This premise became known to us in short as IIIF as a trunk. So the first step was that we needed to produce IIIF Manifests for all of our objects in the repository. I think at this point in time, we did not have that. And we also needed to build DH and digital exhibit instances that extended some of these collections and that consumed manifests that were delivered from our new IIIF APIs. And at this point in time, as I entered step 2, my thought was that our exhibits would contain some curated references to the manifests, and that we would want to bring those in IIIF viewers. But I knew this would take a lot of manual work. And so I was walking down the hallway with Mark and probably drinking coffee. And I asked Mark, what if our new boutique DH sites were actually sourced from a IIIF collection? And this is when we found the Canopy to our trunk. And that original Canopy project, some of you may know of it, it's called Rising from the Ashes. It's an oral history project. It was built using Gatsby.js. It was sourced from a IIIF collection. However, it wasn't really developed for reuse. And this led, basically what I mean by that is that it couldn't be reused with other IIIF collections very easily. There was a lot of hard-coded references to the Rising from the Ashes collection, and it just led to a decline in the code base health to an extent where it was just like it needed to be refactored if it was ever going to be used for a different collection altogether. And it was around this time when this launched in late 2021, the previous project, the Gatsby project launched in 2021, that I started to think about building a new version of Canopy. I had just moved to Northwestern, and I sort of opted to switch over from Gatsby to Next.js for a slightly slimmer build. But really the main focus of this new project was that I wanted to make sure that it could be used with any IIIF collection, both Presentation 2 and 3. And if I wanted to make sure that if you had a collection with 50 manifests, those 50 manifests would be represented by 50 pages with real URLs. I wanted to make sure that the label and the summary and the metadata properties that were from those manifests would sort of stitch together to create some sort of search index where those 50 pages could now be potential results. I wanted a user to be able to say, these metadata labels would become my facets in my new website. And I wanted a researcher or some sort of digital humanities focused individual to be able to use Markdown to sort of leverage those manifests in the collection and sort of talk about these manifests in a certain way. And I'll demo that more in a bit. In addition to that, I wanted to sort of think of this as a IIIF product in some sort of way. And so maybe Canopy could also extend out other parts of the specification, IIIF specifications, things like the nav place extension to be able to place manifests on a map. Potentially in the future, things like the nav date extension to be able to place manifests in some sort of temporal dimension, so a timeline component of some sort. And then also the I in IIIF, one of the I's stands for international. So I wanted to make sure that Canopy could support other languages. Before getting further into Canopy's features, so I want to provide a brief update on what a IIIF collection is and what it can be. So a IIIF collection is specified alongside a manifest as a resource type in the Presentation API. Similar to a manifest, a collection has its own dereferenceable URI, and that would act as its ID. And inside that collection, there's an items array. And that array can contain entries to other items, which can both be manifests and collections. Canopy currently only supports collections of manifests, but I do hope that maybe at some point, collections of collections can be supported as well. Each entry with those items should be very minimal as far as the properties that are used to describe them. It should not be a fully embedded manifest. Things like label, summary, thumbnail, and maybe very minimal metadata. One more point, collections aren't necessarily fixed to a single named collection. They can be, but they could also be a set of search results, or even, as I mentioned earlier, a curated list of manifests from multiple institutions. A quick rundown of the Canopy build process. So the first thing that Canopy does is it'll go out and it'll fetch that IIIF collection. And then it'll decide whether or not it needs to upgrade that from a version 2 collection to a version 3 collection. Then it will go into that collection and start running through all the manifests inside that collection. Then it will decide whether or not it needs to upgrade those manifests. And then it's going to collect the label, the summary, the metadata, and the thumbnail from those manifests. And we're going to store those for later use in building out a search index and some other little helpers that sort of build the static site itself. We're also going to assign slugs for the manifests that are going to be represented as pages in the site. So these would be like unique URLs. And then, as I mentioned, we just store that for later for the actual build of Next.js. Demo here. So this collection here, this collection here at Tennessee is called Heilman. It has about 1,120 objects in it. And it's also represented by this IIIF collection with 1,120 manifests. This manifest itself has an ID at the very top. You can sort of see that. And then also each one of the manifests have their own IDs as well. So I'm going to go over to my code here, and I'm going to create a canopy.json file. This will serve as basically the build file for this Canopy instance. It's going to look very similar to this sample file that you're seeing right here. And I have a pre-made config that I'm going to paste in. But essentially, it is just 3 properties. It's a collection, which is that URI to that collection on the right side of the screen there. There is a featured array, which is all the different manifests that I want to feature from my collection. These are the IDs to those manifests. And there's a metadata array. This is an array of different metadata labels that I want to target to be used as my facets in my Canopy instance. There's also a dev property here as well to define if I want the dev and production properties to be different. And I'll go over to my terminal. I'm going to type npm run dev, and it's going to just start cycling through that collection. And you can sort of see it working right here. This takes about 20 seconds. It's going to go through all 1,120 of those in chunks of 10 at a time. And so right now we're hitting this URI, or digitallib.utk.edu, and now it is built. And I'm going to copy and paste localhost 5001 over into my browser. And I now have a fully functioning Canopy instance built using only that IIIF collection. So more about the search API routes that are generated on build. Creating a simple and performant search index is an important part about the Canopy build process. Canopy uses FlexSearch to handle this, opting towards this as sort of an in-memory solution that works very well for quick responses. And upon a user searching in the user interface of Canopy, the request is made to an internal API route that returns back a set of search results as a IIIF collection, which are rendered to the screen. Certain facet API routes are also in here as well. Now, the facet API routes differ from the search routes as they are an exact match on the metadata in the manifests. And those are also returned as IIIF collections on the search pages. So back to our Heilman example here. At the top, you'll see the featured manifest that we had brought, or that we had set in our configuration. And then down below, you'll see a bunch of highlighted works. These sliders are sort of rendered from the curated set of metadata labels. If I go up to the search box and type maple, I'm going to come to the search results page where I have 93 results for Japanese maples and various other maples, I guess. You see a sort of a continuously scrolling grid here. If I click on one item, I'm going to come to a work page that represents a single manifest. This work page has a IIIF viewer. This is our Clover viewer, which is in Sanvera Labs. If I scroll down below here, I sort of see all the metadata that is coming from the manifest rendered out. And I also see the faceted metadata available as links. If I were to click on one of those, which I just did, now I'm brought over back to the search page where I see the 46 results for the faceted subject that we have here. There's other ways that you can customize a Canopy instance. For instance, you can customize the navigation pretty easily by editing some very basic JSON files. Mentioned earlier, you can feature manifests. Any manifest that is in the collection can be featured. You can also customize the FlexSearch configuration if for any reason you wanted to change the weighting of a label or a summary or metadata values. There's different locales that are available in a Canopy instance. Currently, only English and various flavors of Norwegian are supported, but we are open for PRs to add new languages as well. And then finally, this is where sort of the power of using something like Next.js comes in, is that you can add contextual content using Markdown. So Canopy uses something called MDX, which allows you to use Markdown and JSX alongside each other. Essentially, this means that you can import a React component from Canopy's embed library and insert it anywhere within your content. So I'm going to take advantage of that and render a viewer here between paragraphs. This viewer has an API route for facet subject buds. It's going to render a IIIF collection and then in the viewer here. And then if I were to copy this and put it down below again, maybe I'm going to update the route here to be date and undated. That viewer now is going to render down below in between this paragraph and that block quote. But you can use other components as well. So there's a slider component that is rendered on the home page. I'm going to import that in here and change this viewer down below to use the slider component instead of the viewer component. And this is where using IIIF as a data model really allows us to reuse existing componentry very easily. And using MDX allows us to intermix components with Markdown content. So there's still a lot of work to do to refine how Canopy can exist in the future. I'm looking into documenting how you can import and use Mirador, Universal Viewer, or even RAMP, which you saw and heard about earlier. And I would be interested in developing also a fully static option. This would have to exclude the internal API routes and use a static search index from file, but it's very possible. Also supporting collections of collections, the timeline, and etc. Appreciate the time, and please visit the repository and explore how Canopy can be used. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.